I'll briefly introduce myself. My husband and I own and operate Long Green Farms in Rising Sun, Maryland. And I'll tell you a lot more about our history as we kind of go through this, but I think that's something that somewhat makes our farm unique. So a little bit about me. I grew up in Knoxville, Tennessee. I have my undergrad is from Carson-Newman, and it's in business, and I have my master's in public health, and I received that from the University of Tennessee. And prior to returning to the farm, I spent 9 years as an administrator for a hospitalist and pulmonary critical care group. So I didn't grow up in agriculture, didn't grow up on a farm, and I didn't grow up in an agricultural community. I currently serve as an associate for the Cecil County Soil Conservation District and as a regional council rep at Land O'Lakes. I also host the Adopt a Cow program for, I have kids in the DC area, Maryland, Delaware, and I have some kids from New Jersey. I'm an influencer for American Dairy Northeast and a 2023 graduate of the Young Dairy Leaders Institute. So as you can see in my career, a significant about face from healthcare. Let's talk about the brains of the operation, which is my husband. He's an 8th generation dairy farmer. And how we met is he moved to Tennessee to play football. And so we met first semester freshman year of college. He also has his business degree from Carson-Newman University. And after playing and coaching, he spent 8 years with the city of Knoxville serving on their special operations team. He currently serves as a board member for the Rosebank Cemetery, a board member of Cecil County Farm Bureau, and a board member of the National Dairy Research and Promotion Board with USDA. So that's a little bit about us, but how did we get here? So we married in 2007, and we returned to the farm in 2015. My father-in-law was diagnosed with a terminal illness, and I was on maternity leave with our second in 12 months. So was full of life changes at the time. And today we farm with our 3 daughters. And here is our Y. So the blonde, that's the oldest. Her name is Saraline. She's now 12. Henley is in the middle. She's 11. And Baylor is with the goofy grin, and she just turned 8. When we moved to the farm, the oldest was 2, the youngest was 1, or the middle was 1, and there was no youngest at the time. In 2021, we were awarded Farmers on the Rise. And in 2022, we won the Leopold Conservation Award for the state of Maryland. So let's talk a little bit about our farm history, and it has a lot to do with how we are in this space, if you will. So the first tax record for the farm is 1759. It was purchased in pounds from England on a lease-to-own agreement. And the original 120 acres is still the hub of our farm today. So in the photo, you can see the stone house. That's actually a log cabin, and the house that stands today was built around the original log cabin. So the ceilings are still really low. But the milking parlor, which is probably behind the green bar that I see, that's actually like the hub of our operations today is the same hub as it was. Now there's some benefits to that, some detriments. One is we're built on the side of a hill. So it was never meant to be, we're still a very small farm. We milk about 150, but it was never designed to even be the size that it is. So we have some challenges in our land space, but we still operate on the same 120 acres, and we've added to the farm over the years. So it's continuously operated as a dairy by the Crothers family. We think that's something that makes us unique, is it's been passed from one generation to the next, but it has consistently been a dairy since 1759. And each generation has added a little piece to the operation, both in land size and into the operation itself, the efficiencies, et cetera. So I think it's really important that I point out that I feel like that sustainability is kind of a recent buzzword. I'm not going to say like in the last year or 2, but in the last, I don't know, maybe 7 to 10 years, it's become an area of focus. But I strongly believe, and this is somebody coming from outside of agriculture into agriculture, I don't believe that it's new. And I believe that farmers are the original environmentalists. I don't think that you have the opportunity to farm the same piece of ground for over 265 years without intentional effort to preserve the land, water, and the resources. And we believe that every generation has contributed to our overall sustainability story. But at the heart of what we do, we are a business. And so for every opportunity that we have to ask ourselves, how does this fit into our business model? I think we all want what is best, but we can't lose the family farm in efforts to install a particular practice. It has to make business sense. And so at the end of the day, love and passion doesn't pay the bills. We absolutely love what we do. Want this opportunity for our children for the future, but it's important to us that this is a sustainable business model. So what we have seen is that conservation practices are also good for our business. So let's first go back to, how did we end up in this space? And when we moved to the farm in 2015, we were in not a really good financial situation. And we did not know that when we moved to the farm. And so we started really thinking about what's the strategy of the operation. And to be fully transparent, the first meeting we had with the accountant, he said, sell the cows. And I mean, that was a low blow. We had given up our careers and our livelihood to move here to take the family farm. And the first thing the accountant says is like, you're not paying the bills. Like, you can't do this. And so my husband and I had a strategic meeting and said, what are we going to do? I mean, we either have to sink or swim really, really fast. And how are we going to get there? And I know from my experience in business that there's more than one way to improve your bottom line. And in going about improving your bottom line, you can either address your income or address your expenses, or you can do both. But knowing our personalities, and something that we very much talked about is, well, how do we improve our income? Well, we're a dairy farm. Our like 98% of our income comes from the milk market. We have no control over the milk market. Our check is what our check is, essentially. And so we could diversify and go into some type of, consumer interaction, et cetera. And we just said, that's not really what we want to do. And we really wanted to work on improving our expenses. So control the controllables. And so we came up with kind of our 3 pillars. The first is sustainability. That's meeting the needs of the present without compromising future generations. And I mean, hello, if our goal is to carry this to the next generation, our children will be the 9th generation. Sustainability very much made sense for what our long-term goals were. The next is conservation, the prevention of waste. This is where it really comes into talking about how can you control your expenses, what are potential areas of waste that we could really focus on, and to conserve for the future. Preservation, to protect something from loss, injury, or damage. To preserve, and that was our goals, is to preserve and carry the farm to the next generation. So in our journey, if you will, we had to heavily, not had to, but yes, we did have to. We had to heavily rely on our partnerships. Caleb left the farm at 18. When he was growing up, he was the youngest of 3 boys and pretty much encouraged to have extracurricular activities because the farm was not really destined to be his. And we both came back to the farm. I came back without any knowledge. To be really transparent, I agreed to come back to the farm because I wanted to be a stay-at-home mom. So we had to heavily rely on experts to help see what our opportunities were. And so here's just a list of some of the partnerships that we have heavily relied on over the years that have been wonderful partners for us. And I won't go through the list, but I do encourage you to take a peek because many of these are partners that also are available to each and every one of you. So how did we get started? So my husband said he remembered that his grandfather had a really good relationship with soil conservation, and he knew that there was programs available, but he was gone for 14, 15 years. So coming back to the farm in our early 30s, um, we went down to soil conservation and said, hey, we're like the new kids on the block. We need some help, but we don't even know what we need. Can you come out to the farm, walk around with us, and see what opportunities we have and what programs that you might have that might fit some of our needs? Just take a look and give us an idea of what might be available for us. And so they did. Um, and they really helped us kind of venture down our sustainability path. So most of these practices you're very familiar with, so I won't go into the definitions of each of these, but we do no-till planting. Cover crops, when we moved here, I would tell you like 20 acres were in cover crops, and now we have over 300 acres in cover crops. So that was a huge, pretty immediate opportunity for us. We purchased a drag line really to increase our efficiency and to drive down the cost of custom work. So what used to take us about 40 hours takes us about 7 hours. And as we all know that we're all facing labor issues, so that was a huge opportunity for us just to increase the efficiency of our labor force. This year we purchased an injector, and so we are super excited to see how that works for us in the spring. In 2020, we partnered with Appalachia Stream Restoration and Wetland Studies to reconstruct over 14,000 linear feet of a waterway that feeds into the Northeast Creek. And, you know, oftentimes I hear, oh, you're in the Chesapeake Bay, and a lot of people see that as a challenge. And I will agree that it has some challenges having this much waterways through our property, but I think we really sell it as an opportunity for us to be included in a lot of projects. And so this was a great project for us. As you can see, the environmental impact is listed at the bottom, but over 60,000 trees are planted. Also, over the years, I've been asked a couple of times about how these partnerships work. And each partnership is unique, but I assure you that we would not have ventured down this path if it wasn't mutually beneficial for both of us. And honestly has helped kind of led us into the next project. So each time we've partnered with one of these agencies, they've kind of introduced us to other opportunities for us. But also a lot of the partners that we've worked with have really been kind of turnkey operations, meaning it's not been a huge burden or responsibility on us to manage the project. They've been very much managed by the agencies. So I think that's kind of a misconception about some of the work that's done in this space. In 2017, we constructed a heavy use area, and this probably out of all the projects that we've done have changed our life the most. When we moved to the farm from calf to cow, there was 8 spots that the animal would move from. And each time the animal had to be loaded up on a cattle trailer and hauled to the next location. And feeding was literally filling 5-gallon buckets and dumping it in different locations. And it took us all day just to milk and feed the animals. And so our heavy use area has swing gates, and we can move the animals up in groups, and it's a 1-person job. And it literally allowed us to continue to operate from a workforce standpoint. I should go back and say, you know, from a conservation standpoint, also there was a tremendous amount of rainwater diversion that was constructed in the heavy use area. So that was a portion of the environmental impact that it had, plus manure storage on site. So just some photos of our construction. Grassed waterways, buffers, terraces, very much helps protect your equipment, so something to consider. In 2018, we put the farm into land preservation with Cecil Land Trust, and this was really an important opportunity for us for multiple reasons. But it really gave us the opportunity, my husband and I, to kind of start from a fresh slate. So in order to continue milking, our milking parlor needed significant improvements. We had some debt. We had purchased an additional 77 acres. And this was kind of an opportunity for us to wipe our financial slate clean, and for us to invest in our milking facilities so that we could continue to do that. It was taking too many man hours just to milk, because the equipment that we were using was completely outdated, but also only half working. So we really needed to be able to manage this as a family farm. And I can't speak enough, and I know everybody is feeling the same labor pressures that we are, which is we had to make this more efficient in order to survive. So in 2023, we installed a sand separator, and we bed our cows with sand. This is something my husband feels very strongly that we do. Our long-term goals, again, were to address our expenses. And so let's talk about the first stage of this project was the installation of the sand separator. The second part is the methane digester, and I'll talk about that in a little bit. But with the sand separator, we are now fully operational with the sand separator. It's running very smoothly. The goal is to recycle about 90% of our sand. So this impacts our business in multiple ways. One is that we're no longer purchasing that 90% of the sand. Two is we are no longer paying for the trucking and hauling of that sand. We're decreasing the emissions on the roads by not having the trucking and the hauling of the sand. We're decreasing the fuel expenses by not paying for that, decreasing the sand expenses. And sand is a non-renewable resource. So recycling the sand is huge for our operation, but also it is a requirement in order for the methane digester to work. So we partnered with McClanahan. They've been wonderful to work with. And we turned it on, I'm going to tell you, maybe December. We had some kinks to work out, as you do with any new piece of equipment, but McClanahan was wonderful in working with us. They actually sent a crew down here twice to help us optimize it. And, you know, each farm is unique. So each farm has its own challenges, and they helped us address our unique farm's challenges to make it as efficient as possible to optimize the equipment. In 2023, we also installed a covered cattle walkway. This created a rainwater diversion, and also helped put our cows under cover. So the previous cattle walkway was broken, and there was significant leakage, if you will, because the concrete was in such poor conditions. So a part of this project was also the decommission of an earthen lagoon. So if you see the large, you see the new covered cattle walkway, and if you see the large dirt underneath it, that's where the old earthen lagoon was. And then you'll also see the new concrete manure pit that was installed. The new cattle walkway also had a push off directly to the new concrete manure pit. So we partnered with the Alliance of the Chesapeake Bay, and they converted 7 acres of former pasture land that borders the Northeast Creek to a forested buffer. And I think in the snow, it's kind of hard to see, especially on a screen, but you can see some of the live stakes in the ground, but that was planted this winter. And so that is a snow picture from probably a month or so ago. Also, we acidify our milk. So we worked with a vet to help us take waste milk and milk from the tank and acidify our milk. It makes it shelf stable. This eliminated the need for us to purchase powdered milk. So again, a cost savings for us. It also allowed us, from a labor position, the efficiency to be able to feed calves somewhat on a different schedule. So before we were taking milk, but we had to feed calves as soon as we were done milking because we didn't have a shelf-stable product, and or we had to use powder, and this allows us a little more flexibility in the schedule of feeding the calves. So we are in the process of installing a methane digester. So if you can see from the overhead view, kind of where we are, we were able, the snow makes it a little challenging to see maybe on screen, but we were able to complete majority of this project before we had a hard freeze. And I'm super excited to tell you that today our genset will arrive. So we are anticipating the arrival of the genset on the farm today at noon. That is the last piece of the puzzle. Obviously, we have to hook it up and make it work. We will be connecting to the power grid. So we will be the second digester in the state to be able to do that. We're super excited about that. We faced many challenges along the way to get here. And so I'll list what some of those are. One is we're a small dairy, and many people will say, you can't do it on a dairy our size. And I'll address that concern in just a second. So the challenges we face is the size of our dairy. The second challenge that we face is that there's not legislation in Maryland that requires the power company to work with us. The third challenge that we face is that we're on single phase power. And trust me, when we ventured down this process, we've had a lot of people come to us and say it will never work. And we had to try and try and try again to help us find a partner that believed in the concept of a digester on a small dairy. And so we partnered with Nutrient Control Systems, and they actually have another dairy our size at Dickinson College that has installed the exact same digester that we are installing. We're on single phase power, and we reached out to the power company about the potential of bringing in 3-phase. It was very cost prohibitive. So we were told about $1 million to bring 3-phase power about a quarter of a mile or 3/4 of a mile down the road from the substation. Honestly, the ROI for that is just never there. And we had to work with the power company significantly to create an agreement for us to put the energy on the grid, and then for us to take the energy for the farm first. So our goal in this was not necessarily to increase any form of income, but to decrease expenses. So for the farm, our housing, et cetera, our goal mainly was to eliminate the expenses associated with the power. And so we will be able to do that. I think we have a lot more potential than we can perform at this point, but I think we have to continue to work with the power company to see what our options are. But I think there's a lot of potential in this space. And, you know, in all of the naysayers that we've heard, the one thing that we do know is that a dairy our size has significant challenges, and the smaller dairies are consolidating or going out of business every day. And if we don't want to be that number, we know we have to do something different. And this is our best stab at doing something different. And so we're going to give it all we've got. We've got to make sure it works, and that's tremendous pressure on our shoulders to do it, but we believe that we can do it, and our partners have been phenomenal to work with us. They have some experience in dairies our size and making it work. And so I hope to come back to you next year and share our success story in the methane digester on a small farm. So I think most of you know kind of the benefits of a methane digester. We do have intentions of pressing out the solids and using the solids for animal bedding. So again, that is an opportunity for us to use a byproduct and to create a useful useful product for ourselves on the farm. And we'll continue to land apply the liquid. So we're continually looking at opportunities to decrease our expenses and to generate some additional income through sustainability practices. I want to be really transparent and say it's not one of these practices that's going to hit a home run or to change your bottom line, but it is small changes along the way, year over year, that have proven to be the greatest impact for our business financially. And it is the right thing to do for the farm for the future. So conservation will continue to remain a key focus of our business plan, and we'll continue to look for opportunities to grow in the future. So also just a little bit about kind of, sharing our story and why are we sharing our story? And I mentioned in the beginning, I didn't grow up in agriculture, and I grew up very disconnected from my food source and from farms as a whole. Honest to goodness, I moved here in my early 30s, and if you said, "Where does your milk come from?" and I would have said the grocery store, and I never thought about it anything more than that. I think there's also misconceptions about all farmers and agriculture as a whole and our environmental impact. And I've been overwhelmed, floored by the interest in the industry to really be a part of the solution. And I just see how much work, intentional work, has been put generation over generation into conserving our air, land, water resources. And I think that's a story that needs to be told. I think that we live in the days of like social media is relied on more heavily for news source than news. And I think that we have an opportunity as farmers to speak for ourselves. And I think that we should take that opportunity to speak up and to be our own advocate, but also to really try to connect consumers to the farm, because I believe that there is another story being told. And if we're not telling our side of the story, someone else is telling it for us. So I'll share a little bit of the places that you can follow us. I'm Hills and Holstein on Facebook and Instagram, and we also have a website. I also want to put out there, we sell nothing direct to consumer, so this is not a sales plug by any stretch. There's no financial support that you can give in any of this. It's really just to kind of help spread the word of, what a typical dairy farm life is like, and how we care for our animals, and how we care for the environment, and what it's like to raise kids on a farm, and our unique challenges. I mentioned earlier also I host the Adopt a Cow program, and when I started hosting the Adopt a Cow program, I felt like it was a perfect fit for me, because I felt like my understanding of agriculture was very much on a childlike level. And I was like, I can connect to kids because that's how I understand it. I'm in my infancy of learning as well. It's been such a huge blessing for me over the last 3 years. I've had the opportunity to interact with over 44,000 students. The program has continued to grow and influence so many lives. And I can tell you from the letters that I received, most of these kids are growing up in environments that are also very disconnected from agriculture. The questions that I get about, do my brown cows make chocolate milk? Do I eat my cows? Are they happy? Where's their dad? Right? So the questions that I get, I can tell very much that the kids are excited to learn. We have a live chat every spring, so I get to interact with the kids in a live format every spring. But throughout the year, they get updates as to, when the calf is born, the size of the calf. They learn about the cow, how much milk she's making, what the calves are eating, what the cows are eating. And they follow them as they progress, and they move from, individual housing to group housing, and their diet changes. And then they get to meet them face to face virtually at the end of the school year. So it's really been a joy for me. And here's just some of the letters, the Christmas cards that I received. I receive hundreds of letters a year from students, and it's such a joy oftentimes I recruit my children to kind of help write back to these other kids and connect with kids on their level about, answering their questions and what their life is like on the farm. So just some things about the Adopt a Cow program globally. It has over 43,000 classrooms and over 1.7 million students in all 50 states. So the program has grown significantly. You might have noticed on a previous slide that the number of students that I have in my program has decreased, but we've been able to recruit host farms as the program has grown. And I think other host farmers would tell you that it's such a joy for us as well. So I also have participated in a number of podcast articles and speaking engagements, really just an opportunity to kind of share our story. And, I don't want to say a success story, but from where we were a decade ago and the accountants say, you need to sell your cows, like essentially you need to go out of business. I'm so sorry that you gave up your lives, to where we are today. I do think that we've made significant progress, and hopefully by sharing our story, we can help each other. When I came into agriculture, it's very, very different than in healthcare. And healthcare is a very competitive industry. And if I'm allowed to say, kind of cutthroat, everybody wants the competitive edge, and it's secret, secret, secret. Don't share anything. And in agriculture, what I found is that we've had so many farmers that have helped us along the way. From neighbors that have allowed us to come see their model of a sand separator and how it works, and to share with us, some of the challenges they face and some things they would do differently. It really saved us some heartache. And I'm happy to share with one of those. Sand is highly corrosive, and they advised us that they wish they had created a separate control room for their equipment, to protect their equipment. And they wish they had insulated their building because in the winter months, they had so many problems with ice and the freezing that it jammed up their sand separator. And so before we ever built our building, we said, hey, there's two things we know we want. We want a separate control room, and we want an insulated building. And we need a source of heat to keep our building from freezing. And no, like, I've just been overwhelmed with how many people were willing to share, their struggles and challenges to save us the heartache. And we very much want to do the same thing. We've been honored to open our farm to other farmers, to walk around and see some of the projects that we've completed and ask questions, and to have full transparency, because this is how we help each other and overall help the industry rise. So what's the future of dairy, and what's the future for us? So I only see an opportunity for growth in milk production year over year. I think we're going to continue to focus on precision farming, regenerative ag, and reducing our environmental impact. Again, I am floored with gratitude at the way I see the industry embracing this opportunity for us to grow. I always say, like, you want to have a seat at the table, especially when someone is pointing fingers at you. And our involvement in Checkoff and opportunities from Checkoff has just really shown us the willingness and the enthusiasm for us to kind of to work together to reduce our environmental impact. So I think there's going to continue to be more innovation, more technology to improve efficiency and quality, and AI. We have significant challenges ahead: climate challenges, labor shortages, I don't think are going to go away. And I'll avoid politics altogether, but we're at a time in which there is going to be some volatile pricing. And I think that we need to brace ourselves and kind of prepare for that. I think there's a lot of consumer opportunities, and I'm not an expert in this space at all, but my side hobby, or my passion, if you will, outside of this, and has always been in nutrition and physical fitness and overall health, wellness, if you will. And what I see is there is a trending consumer shift to food as medicine. And I think at one point, if I'm allowed to say, that farmers were kind of pitted as the villains. And I see an opportunity for farmers to be the hero. And I think we're moving into that space. And I'm super excited about our opportunities to kind of share our story and to dispel myths and to really show how food is the healing property. And dairy is a superfood. So I'm excited to see that that shift in consumer trends. And for us, ideally, our future is the next generation. And my husband and I feel very strongly that we have a responsibility to create a financially and lifestyle desirable operation so that our kids want to return to the farm. So it's really important to me that this is something that they want to do, that it's not taken out of guilt. And I think that my husband and I have the responsibility to create an operation that is desirable for them. And so just some closing remarks, if you will, about what our mindset has been and some lessons we've learned along the way is one is, we have to create a plan, decide what is the right direction for your operation. Patience, 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 patience. My husband has much more patience than I do. But each of these projects that we've taken on, we have faced challenges along the way. I tell a happy story, but it would be ill of me not to mention that, there's times that we felt defeated, and there's times we've had to try and try and try again, or we've been rejected. And you have to persevere. Keep in mind why you're doing what you're doing. We would not be where we are today without partnerships. There are many, many experts in each of these areas, and I think that we have to rely on these experts to help us. And most of these experts are traveling from farm to farm, and so they have a fresh set of eyes, where sometimes we kind of get tunnel vision because we do the same thing over and over again every day, or we see the same things over and over again. Also, you need to allow yourself permission to pivot. Sometimes it doesn't happen in our time frame. Our genset was supposed to be here in August. Hopefully it arrives today. But sometimes you have to pivot, and you have to rearrange the order, or make different choices, etc. So the conditions will never be perfect, but create a plan, follow through, execute. And I think I have just a few more minutes for Q&A. I didn't see any of the pop-up box, but I'm not sure sharing my screen I will. So if one of the hosts wants to jump in and help me with the questions, that'd be great.
Yep, I'm happy to do that. And I haven't seen any come across in the chat. We'll open it up. We've got a few minutes for questions, and I have one that I can start off with if you don't mind, because looking at the projects that you've implemented so far on the farm, it seems like, I don't know if you kind of pictured all of those together as a strategic plan, like from the front end. It seems like it's sort of more like iterative, like as a need and opportunity arises, like you take that leap and take on the next thing. And so I'm wondering, like, what is the next nut to crack? And are you finding that there's a program that can support that need, or that there's a gap that needs to be filled to help you with that next step?
So great question. And I'm going to answer it into kind of two parts, which is the first one is very early on, we did say that we wanted a methane digester. And it's because we looked at our electric bills and we said that is a huge expense. And we have a byproduct that can help us eliminate expense. So there's going to be animal waste. How can we repurpose and repurpose and repurpose something that is a natural byproduct of a farm to help us eliminate an expense? And the same thing with the bedding. So right now we pay for sawdust, and by pressing out the solids, we're not going to have to pay for sawdust, right? So we saw this as a huge opportunity, and it has taken years of planning for this to come to fruition. However, in those years, we had doors open and other opportunities, and we took them. And so it wasn't necessarily like, here's our 10-year plan and every single thing has happened on schedule. Absolutely not. The methane digester was a part of the original plan. But again, we have pivoted 1,000 times. We were rejected. We had companies come to us and say, it'll never work on a farm your size. We also had a company say to us, it costs me the same amount of money to design a digester for a farm your size as it does for a 40,000 cow herd. Like, why would I spend my time and resources working with a small farm like you when I can get such a bigger project? Fair enough. So we faced a lot of rejection and had to pivot, but each time, like we've always been open to the opportunities and welcoming the opportunities, seeking other opportunities, even while we were working on kind of a long-term goal. And so that's kind of the whole permission to pivot is like, you can't just say, well, nope, that's my goal and be straight ahead. You will miss tremendous opportunities along the way. So the next big project for us has a lot more to do with lifestyle and the ability to continue at the rate we're continuing. And we need a new barn and we need robots. And we need that for labor efficiency purposes. Our barn is really in terrible condition, if you will. My husband says it's the eyesore of the farm. Finding programs for that has been next to impossible, but I'm not giving up. So I think that if we want to continue to see small farms in the future, we're going to have to be able to embrace that those challenges might look a little differently. And, you know, Caleb's had a unique opportunity to learn from farmers, specifically from the West Coast, but really all across the country with his role in National Dairy Board. And, you know, robots are not a great fit for every farm. But one thing that we've heard over and over again is it does seem to be a good fit for a smaller farm. And it's not going to eliminate your labor per se. It is going to change what your labor force looks like. And so we have used some technology that has already kind of helped us venture down this path. So a program like Cow Manager, which is basically like a Fitbit for cows. And my husband can look at an app on his device and he can tell, you know, essentially like we have health and activity. And so he can keep up with their temperature and how many hours they spent eating versus how many hours they spent laying around. So it kind of changes that. But I think in terms of the future for us, we need a new cow barn. We need robots. We would like to use the energy produced from our digester to also power our robots, which I think would make kind of a unique, cool story. And we have faced significant challenges finding programs that want to support a new cow barn or robots. But that really has to be the next step for us in order to continue.
Gotcha. I will open it up for questions from the audience outside of chat. If anybody wants to come off mute and ask a question, we have a couple minutes.
Really great presentation. I really enjoyed it. I grew up on a small dairy farm in South Central Pennsylvania, milking 50 cows with a pipeline, 4:30 in the morning. There's nothing better. So thank you for your story. Really great. Are you part of any dairy co-op that can help you manage your milk pricing by chance, or do you do that all by yourself, or take it as it comes?
No, we are with Land O'Lakes, and we've been with Land O'Lakes since the 70s. And they help us with our milk pricing, but we get component bonuses, et cetera. But to be really honest, there's very small, I mean, it's a traded commodities market. So, I mean, I think Land O'Lakes gives us the best pricing that we have seen in the area, and we continue to monitor other opportunities. But you know, it doesn't necessarily match the labor that is put into producing milk.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay, well, I will second Scott's comment in the chat and just now, you know, thank you very much for sharing your incredible story. And just, you know, kind of walking us through the path, the journey that you guys have taken so far. And we look forward to having you back at some future event too, where you can give us an update on how some of the newer projects are going. So Alice, thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
Yep, yep. So with that, I will turn it over to Scott with Purdue to talk about regenerative ag and low carbon products.